60,000 people breached a border in under 48 hours. 67 of them died trying. And within days, the President of the United States stood up in a cabinet meeting, pointed at this crisis happening 4,000 miles away on the coast of Africa, and said, "This is exactly what America would look like under different leadership." Tonight, I'm going to show you what's actually happening in Spain right now, why Trump himself just made this the centerpiece of his own immigration argument, and why, whether you agree with him or not, this story says something real about where immigration politics is headed globally, including right here at home. Let's start with the facts on the ground, because this crisis is genuinely severe. Between July 30th and 31st, somewhere close to 50,000 migrants crossed from Morocco into Ceuta, a small Spanish territory sitting on the North African coast, some swimming around breakwater barriers, others forcing their way through a local detention center built for just 512 people that ended up holding over 700, with hundreds more camping outside as the facility collapsed into what officials called total operational chaos. The death toll has climbed to 67, some who drowned in the crossing itself, others killed in a stampede as crowds tried to force their way across a breakwater fence. By Friday, Spain's Interior Ministry said more than 48,300 of those migrants had already been returned to Morocco, many walking back voluntarily after finding no food or shelter waiting for them once they arrived. Here's where the political story actually explodes, though. President Trump publicly declared this crisis a talking point for the midterms, saying that if Democrats retake power, illegal immigration in the U.S. would reach levels that would make Spain look small-time. He called the situation in Ceuta a catastrophe and warned that without his administration in office, the country would be invaded at levels far beyond what Spain is currently experiencing. Now, I want to be straight with you here, because this is important. Multiple immigration analysts have pushed back hard on that direct comparison, pointing out that the mechanics driving Ceuta are genuinely different from the U.S. southern border. At the U.S. border, migrants have typically surrendered to federal agents to formally request asylum. In Ceuta, this was people physically swimming around fences and rushing a shoreline, a completely different pattern, with different legal and geographic drivers behind it. So Trump's specific claim that Spain shows what America would look like isn't really an apples-to-apples comparison. But here's why his comment still matters, even if the comparison itself is imperfect. It shows you that immigration crises anywhere in the world are now instantly becoming political ammunition everywhere else, almost in real time, on both sides of the political aisle, in multiple countries at once. Quick pause here, because if global stories like this, the ones that actually connect back to what's happening here in the U.S., are useful to you, go ahead and hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're going to keep tracking how immigration politics is shifting on both sides of the Atlantic at the same time. So what's actually driving this crisis, if it's not simply a spontaneous humanitarian surge? Spain's own Interior Ministry has pointed directly at a recent Spanish Supreme Court ruling that restricts authorities from immediately deporting people who swim into Ceuta. And officials say human trafficking networks appear to be actively exploiting that ruling to encourage the flow of undocumented migrants, mostly young people, across the border. This is nearly an exact repeat of a similar incident back in 2021, when a diplomatic dispute between Spain and Morocco led Moroccan border forces to suddenly step back and let thousands cross almost overnight. Analysts are now telling the New York Times that Morocco may have felt scorned by Spain's recent diplomatic outreach toward Algeria, and some reports suggest Moroccan authorities may have quietly encouraged this latest crossing as a form of political pressure, though Spain has publicly rejected the idea that the crisis was deliberately manufactured. The Moroccan ambassador to Spain has stated the situation was not wanted by the Kingdom of Morocco at all. And here's a detail that makes this even more politically loaded. This crisis is unfolding at the exact same time Spain has been moving in a completely different direction from the rest of Europe on immigration overall. Earlier this year, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's government launched a regularization program that has already drawn more than 1 million applications from undocumented migrants already living in Spain, seeking legal status, specifically to help shore up the country's shrinking workforce. So you've got one government simultaneously trying to open a door for over 1 million people already inside the country, while also dealing with an actual, deadly border crisis unfolding in real time at one of its territories. That contradiction triggered a furious response across the rest of the continent. Italy announced temporary border controls, specifically targeting travelers arriving from Spain. France ordered extra security checks along its shared border with Spain. 22 EU countries, led by Italy's Giorgia Meloni, formally called for an emergency meeting of interior ministers to discuss tightening Europe's external borders altogether. Sanchez fired back hard, publicly accusing his fellow European leaders of a selfish, polarizing, and unlawful reaction to Spain's crisis. Now let's connect this to what's actually been happening here in the United States over the exact same stretch of days, because the parallel is honestly striking, even if the situations themselves are different. While Spain was dealing with a literal deadly border breach, we've been covering ICE arrests expanding directly into U.S. airports, targeting people with pending cases and even valid work permits. We've covered a proposed $100,000 fee that could apply to international students trying to work in the U.S. after graduation through OPT. We've covered the end of duration of status for F1 and J1 visa holders, and what officials are calling the largest denaturalization effort in American history, aimed at stripping citizenship from naturalized Americans. All of that signals aggressive tightening, and at the very same moment, there's an active Senate bill sitting in Congress right now that could open a green card pathway for over 8 million long-term U.S. residents, including Dreamers, TPS holders, and H-1B workers who've waited over a decade. Sound familiar? It's the exact same push and pull happening in Madrid right now, a government trying to open one door while simultaneously being forced to slam another one shut, just told with different specifics, different oceans, different politicians. There's also a deeper economic reality tying both stories together, one worth genuinely understanding rather than just reacting to. Analysts studying the Ceuta crisis point to Morocco's youth unemployment rate, which remains above 37% for people between 15 and 24, sitting right next to Spain's comparatively strong, growing economy. That gap creates what experts describe as a constant structural pull toward Europe that isn't going away anytime soon, regardless of how many fences or court rulings get put in place. And that's genuinely not so different from the economic gravity that's driven migration toward the United States for decades. People moving toward opportunity, wherever that opportunity happens to sit on the map, and however difficult the path to reach it becomes. It's also worth noting that this crisis is happening in a spot that matters well beyond immigration politics alone. Ceuta sits right on the Strait of Gibraltar, one of the most important shipping choke points on Earth. And some risk analysts are now flagging this crisis alongside tensions in the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, as a third major maritime pressure point in 2026 alone, something that could ripple into global trade and shipping insurance costs well beyond the immediate humanitarian story making headlines. So here's the bigger picture I want to leave you with tonight. Immigration enforcement and immigration politics are tightening almost simultaneously across multiple continents right now. The United States, Spain, and the broader European Union, all wrestling with strikingly similar tensions at nearly the same moment. Border security colliding directly with labor shortages, aging populations, court rulings that create unexpected loopholes, and leaders in different countries increasingly borrowing each other's talking points in real time, sometimes within days of an incident occurring on the other side of the planet. Whether you're watching the H-1B debate unfold in Washington or a breakwater fence collapsing in Ceuta, you're genuinely watching pieces of the exact same global story, just told in different languages, on different coastlines, by different governments facing remarkably similar pressure from every direction at once. Before you go, make sure you've hit subscribe and turned on notifications, because we're going to keep connecting these dots, both what's unfolding right here in U.S. immigration policy and the bigger global shifts that inevitably end up shaping it down the road, too. If this perspective genuinely helped you see the bigger picture tonight, drop a comment and tell me what you think, because I want to know whether you think Trump's comparison actually holds up, or whether you see this as two very different crises being politically merged into one narrative. Thanks so much for watching. Stay informed, stay aware, and take care.